Submarines have a range of capabilities that are unique in naval platforms. They can do some things that only submarines can do. They can't do many of the things that other naval platforms can do. They are an offensive weapon, and they need to be positioned in the right place to have the right effect, to have the maximum effect. And in our environment, when you compare it with places like Europe, where distances are substantially shorter than we're talking about in Australia's context, the right places for those submarines to be to get the right effect are an awfully long way from home, and they're across ocean transits where weather can be extreme, and they go from cold water in the south to extremely warm water in the north. So the submarine needs to be able to cope with a diversity of conditions to start with, and it needs to be able to go a long way and stay a long time in the places where it's going to have the most good. The issue with submarine endurance is important from our point of view because of the distances involved. Endurance is not about how much fuel you carry. Endurance is about the crew. Have you got enough crew to do the job that is to be done? Can you feed them for long enough once they get there? Once they get there, can they stay long enough to be effective in the patrol that they're required to do? Those are the key issues. Endurance is all about people. It's less about fuel.
Within that study, we also think the life could be extended, so 3, 4, 5 years, yet to be firmly determined. I call that a remnant life assessment, but we've seen no stoppers currently to being able to extend the life. I very much hope that the new submarine was built here. Difficult question in the sense of how long to design and build. There are 4 options that government want to study, which are all sensible options. One would be military off-the-shelf design with some Australianisation to the standards that we use here. One would be an evolved military off-the-shelf design, another would be an evolved Collins, and the last one would be a brand new submarine design that we most likely would do here in Australia. I think in degrees of timescale, really, the Australianised MOTS has a small design involvement in it. Maybe 2 or 3 years, or probably less than that. And then the build timescale for that would be probably roughly the same time as any of the other options.
There are a couple of capabilities that are priority. One of the key mission sets for our submarines is countering an adversary's submarines. It must be designed to do that well. One of the other key missions for us is intelligence collection, surveillance and reconnaissance. It must be equipped to be able to do that well. And it's a uniquely capable platform to be doing those things. If you can do both of those things well, then you will have a submarine which can do very well what people traditionally see of submarines, and that's sinking ships. There are other missions that are available to submarines by technology these days too. Land attack cruise missiles, mine warfare, special forces. These are all additional mission sets, but they are probably of a lesser priority in the big scheme of things. But they do need to be designed into the submarine to begin with. A conventional submarine is quite capable of doing, and doing well, all of the missions that we require of it. We don't need a nuclear submarine to do those missions. And in any event, Australia is not a nuclear nation, and to embark on submarines would be asking an enormous amount and imposing a phenomenal additional cost into the whole equation.
And the evolved Collins would have more design work involved, with them maybe 4 to 5 years worth of design work. In simple terms, unless we had a nuclear power industry here in Australia, we would find it very difficult to produce a nuclear submarine, or indeed operate a nuclear submarine.
We know quite well from examining the European submarines what they're capable of, and they are very good submarines, but they are designed for a different job. They're designed for a different job in a different operating environment with very different characteristics from where our submarines must operate, and the job that makes the most sense for a submarine in our environment. The government's currently announced plan is that we'll go back and have some consideration about the options that they want further developed, what we call first pass, in the 2013-14 timeframe, with an expectation of going back in about 2017 to decide which submarine is to be built. The US is quite comfortable with who we choose, and will facilitate us working with any nation in coming to a solution. It's not as if they will be vetoing anyone in particular, but their relationship with each of the potential partner nations is different, and it is one which we will have to take into account in making sure that very sensitive technology which has originated from America is adequately protected.
You look at something like Collins, it's one of the most complex things that man could ever possibly make, comparable to a Challenger space shuttle, which no longer sort of flying. It represents a huge investment in the nation in terms of advanced manufacturing capability, high-end technical skills, high-end trade skills, quality production second to none. I mean, it's the epitome of a manufacturing nation, really, and my belief is we should continue to build submarines here to make us the high end of a manufacturing country, a wealth-creating country, and you know, if you build a submarine, that's where you're going to be.
There is no question, and no argument from the Navy, that we have not been getting from Collins the reliable service that we expect to get, and there's a great deal of attention being paid to that. The sources of those problems are several, but it's fair to say that there is not one problem with the Collins class submarine which originated from poor Australian workmanship. There simply is not. Collins class submarines were extremely well built by Australian tradesmen and women to world-class standards. The issues all come from elsewhere. I don't think that there's too much doubt from the work that's been done so far that Collins can continue to run and continue to be a viable military capability in the context of the threats that we might anticipate having to confront through to the end of its life and probably beyond. The Navy has done a lot of work around workforce sustainability in the submarine community and made quite a significant number of changes to the way that workforce is being managed. We're seeing the results already indicating that the answer to your question is undeniably and unequivocally yes. This nation can produce sufficient submariners to fully man the Collins class submarines, and I'm confident in saying also to fully man a larger fleet of 12 submarines, which is the government's intent.